ready to go, right?
We've got to get the,
And I'm over here.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Warrenville Community Development and Planning Committee of the Whole regular meeting, Monday, July 11th, 2022. Deputy Clerk Gravetti, may I please have the roll call?
Mayor Brown,
Here. Here.
Alderman Lockett,
here.
Alderman Ashour,
Here.
Alderman Berry,
Here.
Alderman Davalos,
Here.
Alderman Goodman,
Here.
Alderman Krischel,
Here.
Alderman Widener,
Here.
Alderman Kruckenberg.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now's the time we set aside for citizens' comments. We'll hear any verbal or written comments from the public, and I don't think we have anyone signed up this evening, and it does not appear like we have any callers on the phone that wish to offer their comments. So we'll move ahead with officials and staff comments, beginning with Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. One, July 9th was the last day of the Warrenville Mayor's Fitness Challenge. Be sure you get your minutes recorded and qualify for that premium if you got your 1,500 minutes in. Some pretty impressive numbers. Some people had 8,000 minutes, and that beat me. I only had a little over 4,000 this year, but I felt pretty good about that at least. A couple other things. We have summer days coming up and National Night Out at the beginning of August. So keep those on your calendar. The first couple weeks of August are going to be a lot of fun. Let's hope for some good weather. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Are there any aldermen that have comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to the city administrator. Mr. Coakley?
Thank you. Just wanted to comment for the council. I missed last week's council meeting, a very rare time that I haven't been at a city council or committee of the whole meeting, but an opportunity came up. My sister-in-law's husband, my brother-in-law of sorts, was being honored at the White Sox game. I'm a Cubs fan, so it was fun to go to a ballpark, but anyway, I digress. He was honored for his military service. He was about 20 years in the Navy through several of the Gulf Wars and served in Iraq and Iran, and it was really a neat experience. We found out about it just the week before. He had about 30 of his cousins and brothers and sisters and parents there, and actually it was about a 5-minute honoring, put him up on the Jumbotron, and it was really a cool experience. So I don't miss too many council meetings, but it seemed like a really good purpose. So just wanted to let the mayor was well aware of that, but I thought I'd share that with the council, and sometimes those opportunities knock, you just have to take advantage of them. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on his career, and thank him for his service. It's great to see that kind of level of commitment, 20 years, a long time, through a lot of strife and turmoil for our country. Let's begin the business of the meeting. Tonight's first agenda item is consideration of an agreement with GovHR for the police chief recruitment, and City Administrator John Coakley will present this item. Mr. Coakley?
I will lead off, and then I'll turn it over to, I guess I'd call them my teammates on this venture. As you probably are aware now, our current police chief, Ray Toronto, is retiring effective January 6th, 2023. So we've got some time. He has had a great career here and continuing for it'll be 16 years at that point. As you may or may not remember, this is a mayoral appointment. This is one of the two senior staff members, the city administrator and the police chief, who are appointed by the mayor and then approved by the council. And the last time and in the past, there was a team of the Public Safety and Finance Committee chair, I think that was Public Safety at the time, but that is currently Alderman Goodman, the mayor and the city administrator as the recruitment team that worked directly with the whole process. As such, I had gotten a couple of proposals. One is included in the agenda to find out what it would take to do a recruitment of this magnitude. Mayor Alderman Goodman and I met about a week and a half ago to review the proposals and selected the GovHR one due to a number of reasons. We also had a proposal from the Illinois Police Chiefs Association. That's who worked with us last time. They do a very nice job, but we were very impressed with the GovHR proposal that's in your packet. This is, of course, a very high level and important position. Not that others in our city aren't, but this is also policing the largest city department, and it's no secret that the police world has changed in the last couple of years. It's been evolving for many decades, of course, but it has changed quite a bit. And there are not only recruitment challenges in policing, trying to find qualified people as officers and as all through the ranks, but is also just a difficulty in all hiring across the board, as any of us that have been hiring recently can attest to. So we felt it was very important to get a recruitment firm of this level that can help find recruitment, perhaps nationwide, but at least in the region, to attract candidates. Just to note, we do expect there may be internal candidates as well. We want to make sure that we're looking at the whole gamut and mix, and give the recruiting team and the council an opportunity to make a really informed decision. The GovHR proposal we found to be highly detailed and professional proposal. The two gentlemen that will be running it are police experts, have a long, stellar career in police work. The proposal was well thought out. The whole process is laid out. GovHR has a lot of resources and recruitment expertise and experience in many different positions, but you can see in the proposal the many police chief recruitments across the nation. I did check the local references of recent times, West Chicago, Naperville, and Woodridge a few years earlier. The year in there is different from what I got from the Woodridge folks. It was in 2018, I believe. But the other, Naperville and West Chicago, just did recruitments with GovHR for police chiefs in 2021. All had very positive things and positive references. The city has used GovHR for a number of different things, temporary hiring, filling positions, some recruitments. Even their predecessor agency helped us with the finance director recruitment a number of years ago. So they're not new to us. We have been using them up to the current time, even for a lot of different recruitments. And I forgot we used them to find the chief code official who just started today. So we have even done a recent recruitment of a different nature, different type of department staff. I guess I will turn it over to the other two part of this team, if the mayor or Alderman Goodman, I don't want to talk all night. And I think we're going to have virtually attending Joe DeLopez from GovHR, but I don't see him on the screen yet. So I'm going to, while others talk, I'm going to check my phone, make sure he's not texting me, trying to get a hold of the meeting.
Okay, I'll take over, and then Alderman Goodman. What John said is all true. GovHR is the group if you're looking to do executive recruitment. Currently, DUCOM, which I'm heavily involved with, is using GovHR to find their new executive director. Our executive committee is made up of other mayors, managers, police chiefs, and fire chiefs, all of which agreed that GovHR was the best choice to find our new executive director for DUCOM. All of them, and most of them, have had direct experience with GovHR. They are not the cheapest, but they are the most thorough. Process has been something that we pride ourselves in, and I would like to continue that by telling you that the process to find a new chief is very important, that we do it well, that we have a comprehensive assessment. GovHR is in a position to do that for us. I was far less impressed with the Chiefs Association two-page proposal for what they would do. They weren't even a close second. And given the fact that there has been so much positive experience with GovHR in the local government scene outside of Warrenville and ourselves, this seems like a good choice. Besides the city administrator, myself, and Alderman Goodman, Chief Toronto has also expressed interest in being part of the process, and we said we wanted him to be part of that process. He built the department. He has probably the best feel for what the needs are over there. So I look forward to a very comprehensive process. I hope the council will see it the same way. Yes, it's expensive, but hopefully we'll get somebody either internally or externally that we can use for the next 10 or 15 years, and we'll be very successful. But it is a critical position given the state of the world, that we have someone that is top-notch for a police chief in Warrenville. So that's what I have to add. Alderman?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that the administrator and the mayor have said. I would add to it that one of the things, I realize that the police chief's retirement being effective at the end of the year might feel like we have a lot of time to do this process, but if you really look at how long it takes to put together job descriptions, do advertising, collect applications, and the very thorough process that the prospective candidates will go through, it really makes me feel like we don't have a spare minute. It's going to be a lengthy and I think a good process for both internal and external candidates who are interested. One thing that we discussed and did not decide to go forward with was a community survey to get outreach from the community on this issue. I don't think that there's time for it, and it saves us a little bit of money to not do that, but I would just make a personal request to all of my fellow aldermen as representatives of the community, if we can count on you for some feedback about this position, what you see as the highest priorities for the community. And if you could give us some of your ideas, some of your feedback, it doesn't have to be instantly, but please send that to me or to the mayor so that we have some representation of community input as part of the beginning of this process as we set forth what our expectations are going to be for the ideal candidate to lead Warrenville's police department. So if you can find a little time to think about that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, Mr. Coakley, go ahead.
Be Tom Calda. Thank you. Alderman Goodman, you just reminded me too that as I'm looking at the schedule as you're going over it, and by the way, the schedule is at the very end if you all didn't get that far in the proposal. There is a point for stakeholder interviews, and I think that will be offered to the aldermen as well, but I don't know if you're available those days. They'll try to do some by video, some possibly could be by phone or in person, but they do want your input. But as you're thinking about this, I sit down for some of those stakeholder interviews sometimes, and they give you a few questions, and I think of 100 things after I've left that I could have said. So it's a good opportunity to start thinking of those now, provide those, even make some notes. You'll probably get a short time frame there, but again, as we've all said, it's an important position, and your input, you all are the ones that have to approve this person, ultimately approve the new chief, and you represent your constituents, so your input is vitally important. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to questions from the aldermen. Do we have any questions? Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. Yeah, building on what was just said by Alderman Goodman and the city administrator, I was looking on page 8, and I would just like somebody to drill down a little bit of detail on this phase 1, which is this information gathering you guys have been referring to. I'd like to know what you're thinking the stakeholders are. You've now said that the city council might be a stakeholder group. I see there's community forums. I see we won't have time for this survey. In these points under information gathering, what are you thinking will actually happen? Because I guess my point is the uniqueness of the community, and everybody knows how I feel about the uniqueness of our police department. And I think we've seen it in outcomes and in the way the police and the community interact. It's a very positive situation. And I just would want somebody, a group, involved in helping us to choose another police chief, understand that at a deeper level, then I just want to know what parts of the information gathering are going to happen so that this consultant would have a deeper understanding of what's important to us and how unique we are.
Okay, we'll go to the city administrator first for his comments, and then follow the order and ask the mayor to, and Alderman Goodman to respond too.
Thank you. The main parts, and thank you, Alderman Davalos, they listed out all the options there, and sort of a menu, and we gave them feedback from our team, what we're looking for. The one is the conversations, interviews with the department heads, so the other senior staff colleagues that will be colleagues once the new chief starts. But we also talked about the importance of having aldermen be able to participate in those. So they may be video lined up, or again, phone interviews, but you would all have that opportunity for input. There isn't a place in here, though, as Alderman Goodman was talking about, to get community input, because that's a much bigger process. It would have to be set up. We've done other facilitated type meetings and all that would take several weeks to add that input, and there's an additional cost for that. And our belief is that we can get a lot of good input from the aldermen and the department heads and cover those things. Does that answer the primary question? Okay.
Yeah, it does kind of. So we're considering what you mentioned as the stakeholders we're going to be considering. Okay.
Correct.
Because it looks like it's going to rev up this week, the week of July 11th, that it's going to start, and the stakeholders July 20th and 21st. So I'm assuming that we will hear about that, or you can let us know. And I guess I would just say, is it okay to say that if anyone's listening out there and they had input, they could call the mayor or Alderman Goodman with that kind of input, then anybody could do that? Right? Okay, great. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. I think we don't have a lot of time, but we need to broaden it as much as we can, because it's just really, as you have all said, it's so important. So, thank you.
Mayor Brummel?
Yeah, just in terms of community input, there were a number of reasons that we determined that probably wasn't necessary. One was the cost, two was the time frame, and three, we do not have any serious problems between our department and the community. If we had some outstanding problems that we were grappling with, then that would be a lot more important to get that community input. But we already have a good relationship between the community and the police force, so it didn't seem necessary to dig that deep into what the community is thinking. But as you say, input is welcome. It's not like we're saying, don't tell us. We're saying that we're not going to make a special effort to go out. And we will, of course, craft this when we meet with GovHR to set up the program. We'll be crafting it along the lines of what you said to fit our community. And I'm confident that they'll be able to ask the right questions and get us started on the road that we'll do exactly as you're suggesting we need to do.
Yeah, I just think that relationship, that positive relationship we have with the community and the police force, I think that has to be understood by this consultant.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm just wanting that to happen and for them to really see who we are.
And you note the number of police departments they've worked with?
Right, right. But I don't know what they did with they may have had a lot more time and a lot more money and to do that. But I'm sure they have ways of finding it out. I'm just bringing that up to say it's incredibly important to me that they know who we are.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Goodman.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, very small thing, is that they put this timeline together without knowing what our contract approval dates would be. So it's not like we told them we were having this meeting tonight to discuss it and the council meeting next night to approve the contract. So in my opinion, we're already a little behind on this timeline. It's all going to be pushed just a bit further back than it says here.
Wait, I thought they did know. Wasn't there supposed to be a representative on the
There is supposed
phone?
to be a representative on the call. They were told that after we picked them for a recommendation, yes, but I think not when they wrote this timeline.
I see.
So the dates here, the week of July 11th, I mean, we won't have even hired them
Yeah.
after next week's meeting. So it's all just a little bit earlier. Yeah.
I would just add that, determining that the citizens' input is not of value because of cost could be seen as not a great maneuver on the city's part, and I just wonder how costly it would be to just have something similar to what the Park District is doing with their master planning session, having a comment box available so that if citizens did want to make a comment about the next police chief, they would have that opportunity via just submitting something on the website through a simple comment procedure. And then we would be able to say that citizens could be included as part of the process.
I would encourage any citizen to email me or the mayor. Our information is on the city website, and anyone who is interested or hears about this or is watching this at home, please reach out. We are interested in what people have to say.
Okay.
But I think paying the $2,500 and pushing everything back another month to go through a longer process is just not something we have time for.
Good. Are there other questions or comments from the alderman? I have one other. I saw the cost, and it's $22,500. Is that the not to exceed cost, or are there additions that could be added onto that? I'm looking at the price proposal. City Administrator Coakley?
The basics, well, the full service for the recruitment is $22,000. There's an additional cost for the assessment center that we've asked to have. We had that for the last time we did the police chief recruiting. It was an excellent exercise and really helped us determine the best candidate for our community. I will tell you that I had on paper a completely different person than Chief Toronto, and in the selection process, he quickly rose to the top in that assessment center, and I may have been alone in my assessment, but I wasn't against him. It just, I had a different opinion. He was the outstanding choice and the person I had thought was not really the best suited for us. That is an additional amount. I'm looking at the wrong page right now. The not to exceed that I have put in here is $35,000. Now, their total costs add up to around $32,000, but there's some intangible costs about expenses and travel, should we need to bring candidates in if they are from out of state. We've gotten some very strong recommendation from the consultant from GovHR that we should pay for their travel and their lodging, not make them come in from wherever on their own. Now, we only have regional candidates or in the area that don't need to do that. We won't know until we actually get into the recruitment process and the selection. But the assessment center is a full day plus prep work. And by the way, in that time frame, possibly the afternoon before, maybe a weekday afternoon or a weekday evening, we would have an opportunity for the alderman to come and at least informally, kind of a meet and greet, so you could actually chat with the finalist candidates. The department heads, I envision, would be there as well. We, again, did that 16 years ago, and it worked out really well. So the first time you're seeing the candidates isn't when the finalist is being presented to you. But those are all additional costs for their time and effort. There's a lot of work behind the scenes to put those things together.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the alderman? Okay. Seeing none, I think we have an action to take. Alderman Goodman?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council approve an agreement with the GovHR USA to provide executive search services for the recruitment and selection of the next Warrenville Chief of Police for an amount not to exceed $35,000.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. I'll vote yea. Request a motion, or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Our next item is the consideration of staff recommendations to retain the all-way trial stop condition at the Warrenville Road, Batavia Road intersection. Senior Civil Engineer Christine Hocking will present this item. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Good evening. As you all know, the city implemented the all-way trial stop condition at the intersection of Batavia Road and Warrenville Road back in May. The city traffic engineering consultant, James J. Bennis and Associates, performed a traffic analysis to evaluate the operation and effectiveness of this intersection during that time. We have Tom Adamczyk here from James J. Bennis and Associates. He will go over a brief summary of his findings and conclusions, as stated in his review memo, is in his memo that is in the backup agenda materials, and then I will conclude with why staff is making the recommendation as outlined in the summary. So with that, I'd like to invite Tom up to the podium.
Welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. My name is Tom Adamczyk. I'm with James J. Bennis and Associates, president of the company. We, in the beginning of May, we developed a plan to look at the options for reducing the vehicular speeds in the area of the Old Town district in anticipation of the plans for redeveloping the northeast corner into a more of a pedestrian-friendly retail and possibly some residential uses. Under the previous condition, previous to the trial, the westbound approach of Warrenville Road towards the intersection had a free-flow right turn lane in addition to a through lane for the vehicles going straight west on Warrenville Road. The free-flow turn lane allows the vehicles to move freely without having to slow down very much and proceed to the north on Batavia Road. With the plans to try and reduce the vehicle speeds, we developed a plan to tighten up the intersection. We reduced the lane widths on Batavia Road in the area where the free flow lane was located. That facilitated for vehicles to move faster previously, but with a tighter corner radius at the intersection, the vehicles have to slow down considerably more in order to make the right turn without swinging wide out into the opposing lane. As part of the project was to develop a temporary condition with striping and signage, and that was implemented in the beginning of May. And we monitored the traffic through May with video recordings to see how traffic operations were, how they were moving along, and if there were any issues. And what we noted were a couple of somewhat unique conditions. One of them is for the westbound Warrenville Road approach, vehicles approaching the intersection came in groups. And that's because of the long signal cycle at Warrenville Road and Winfield Road. So the vehicles heading westbound would collect up at the traffic signal, get released, and a whole bunch of cars would come down the hill to the corner and then turn right. That in between the signal changes, then there's very few vehicles passing through. So that creates an area where it's easier to get in and out from the cross streets, River Road, or from the driveways, because you know that there's going to be a gap in traffic pretty soon after those cars come through. The plan also intended to calm the traffic and also make it more pedestrian friendly. With the narrowing of the roadway, you reduce the exposure to vehicles for pedestrians crossing across Batavia Road. And then on the east leg, with the elimination of the free flow right, a striped median was able to be placed in the middle, which gives a little bit of a refuge for the pedestrians that are crossing across Warrenville Road. Our observations and reviewing the videos, we found that the vehicles as they are coming down the hill, when they're on the bridge, they tend to slow down. And the reaction of the drivers is that everybody just kind of eased into the intersection. Instead of pulling up, stopping, and peeling out, it just kind of would roll up and then move on. For the other approaches, southbound Batavia, there was also some grouping of vehicles from there, which could have been from the signal at Butterfield Road, or it could be just a case of cars were following a car that was going slower than they would prefer to go. So there was, both on Batavia Road and westbound Warrenville Road, gaps are developed because of the grouping or platooning of the vehicles. Excuse me. For the Batavia Road approach and for the eastbound Warrenville Road approach, there's really not any difference from what happened, the way it operated before. The biggest impact is the elimination of that free flow right. And there's another benefit to that, in that with a plan for angle parking on the east side of Batavia Road with future redevelopment, vehicles are turning onto northbound Batavia at a slower speed, which is safer for pulling in and out of parking spaces, as well as the reduced speeds enhance the safety for pedestrians in the area. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Alderman Goodman.
Yes, it said that the pedestrians and cars were all recorded, but then there wasn't really any information in the report about pedestrians. Can you tell us what you observed?
What we observed on the video was that there's occasional pedestrians. Right now, there's not a lot of draw for pedestrians other than going to the Prairie Path or going to the I don't know if it's still the Town Tap on the corner, but you have the vacant site to the north, and then two automobile repair shops, which aren't typically uses that draw a lot of pedestrian usage.
And you were also observing, I think it's a Tuesday and a Wednesday, maybe on a weekend, there would have been more pedestrians?
There possibly would have been some more, but again, the lane use is right there. The draw for pedestrians is most likely the use of the paths.
Okay. I mean, I will say that the views I got from my two parents were wildly divergent about whether they liked this change. So, you know, in an informal poll, we're at 50-50.
Great. Are there any other questions? Alderman Berry and then Alderman Lockett.
I pass through that intersection twice a day, once in the morning and turning right onto Warrenville Road. And then in the evening turning left onto Warrenville Road, and then in the evening turning right onto Batavia Road. And at the beginning it was very difficult. A lot of people were kind of confused as to what was going on. But I think most people that drive that path during traffic hours understand now. It's taken them a little bit of time, but you're right, coming down the hill, they do go a little bit slower. And I know that the traffic does group up because of the lights at the intersection of Warrenville Road and Winfield Road. So I'm pleased. I think that it's really helped. I know that myself, also coming from the west, going east on Warrenville Road, I can now make a left-hand turn there, which before I was not able to. I always had to go down 4th Street to try to get to Batavia, and I think that will help the people that live on that street to maybe see less traffic that they don't need on a residential street. So I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Lockett.
I was going to kind of echo that. It seems like everybody used to race down the hill to make that right. But now it's starting to seem maybe that backing up of traffic is actually helping them slow down as they see somebody ahead of them, rather than them seeing if they can do the two wheels, you know what I mean, going around. So I know a lot of people were concerned about that, but it seems like it's actually working to our benefit. I was going to ask, it says on here it's ongoing. Do we know how long this is going to go on for and forever?
I would defer.
So tonight, staff is making the recommendation to make this intersection improvement permanent.
And so then after that, no more tracking?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. I think it's important to think in terms of the future development that we want down there. This is essential for that. We want to slow traffic down. You don't want people racing through an area that you want to develop in a way that attracts pedestrians, bicyclists, and people to stop for businesses. It's a good thing that they stop for a few minutes and look around and maybe see the new businesses we're wanting to have down there. So that's an important concept, I think, and to make it pedestrian-friendly, even though there isn't a particular need right now, it's not very safe right now, or it's past incarnation, I should say. It's important for the future to make it pedestrian-friendly because we're trying to make that into another gathering spot for town. So it seems to me this is a really good change that anticipates the things that we want to develop down there and makes them a lot more likely to happen. So thank you, Tom.
Are there any other comments? Alderman Lockett?
If you'll entertain a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that the city council accept staff's recommendation to retain the all-way stop condition at the Warrenville Road, Batavia Road intersection as a permanent improvement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hocking, and thank you for your presentation, Tom. Okay, our next item on the agenda is the identification of 2 city council members to work with community development staff on form-based zoning overlay district initiative. Assistant Community Development Director Consuelo Aguias will introduce this item. Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Wagner, and good evening, committee. I will begin my presentation today, and I would respectfully ask that you hold off any questions until the end of my presentation. First and foremost, I want to remind everyone how we got here today. The city has adopted 2 plans that support the creation of a zoning overlay district. First, the Implementation Action Plan of the Old Town Civic Center Sub-Area Plan that was created in 2007 specifically identifies consideration of a sub-area overlay district with form-based code elements as a primary initiative. This is an important step to address today's increasing market demand for mixed-use projects and containing missing middle housing. The city's Old Town Civic Center sub-area plan clearly reflects the community's desire for this type of project in the city and thus asks for a form-based code. Second, the city's strategic plan that was adopted in 2015 identifies a mixed-use redevelopment and new community gathering place in the Old Town Civic Center area as an important economic development objective. I'm here today to solicit the participation of 2 city council members to volunteer their time to be part of this crucial stakeholder group that will work on this initiative. The goal is to have a now-inclusive group to guide this initiative. Ideally, this will include 6 members. That would include 2 members from the City Council, 2 members from the Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, a local business/property owner, and the local real estate professional. This group will be essential in guiding the development of the request for proposal, the selection of a consultant, ultimately the creation of the zoning overlay district. A brief outline of the anticipated time commitment and expected responsibilities of the stakeholder group is included in your packet. Now, I know the city council and staff's time for that matter. Time is essential and it's very important. And I want to acknowledge that this ask is asking for time that you may or may not have to add to the many responsibilities that you hold. But I want to just emphasize how crucial it is to have 2 members from the city council be part of the stakeholder group. From a time commitment perspective, I anticipate meeting between 5 to 10 times over a 6 to 8 month time period. The meetings will take place after normal business hours, preferably before a city council meeting or a committee meeting. In respecting, again, the time of the members that volunteer their time. The approved fiscal year 2023 budget does allocate $60,000 for this initiative. And this is to hire a consultant to guide this, to develop this form-based code. But the first step is creating the stakeholder group that would guide the selection, the review of the request for proposals, the selection of the preferred consultant, ultimately the development of this overlay district, and hopefully the implementation. With that, I could answer any questions that you may have. I appreciate your time tonight, and if I open it up for any questions or discussion, if anyone would like to volunteer tonight, that would be great. If not, we would definitely postpone this to the next meeting and hopefully have some volunteers.
Okay, thank you. And of course, there'll be fantastic benefits with the 2 council members that step forward, and great amounts of recognition that I would suppose would come flowing forward for their participation in this.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Anyone? Alderman Lockett?
I would like to volunteer if they'll have me.
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. Thank you very much. We appreciate you stepping forward and contributing to this group. And Alderman Krokenberg.
I would volunteer as well.
Okay, well, there we have it. Unless there's anyone else that wants to throw their hat into the ring, we'll cut off the nominations and the volunteering at this point, and begin our great amounts of appreciation to Alderman Lockett and Alderman Krokenberg for stepping forward on this.
And maybe some pizza.
There could be. And I think the mayor's popping for pizza, I just heard.
I'll make sure to include pizza.
All right, well, thank you. Alderman Goodman.
I'd like to make a motion to name Aldermans Lockett and Kruckenberg to work with the Community Development Department staff to advance the form-based zoning overlay district initiative.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you for your presentation. And again, thanks to the council members for always stepping up and volunteering for these sorts of opportunities. Our next item is an informational report on OTRS number 2 demolition and environmental remediation activities and costs. And Senior Civil Engineer Christine Hocking will introduce this agenda item. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chairman. This project may be slow-moving, but as you can see from my backup memo, there has been a substantial amount of work done since the last update in September 2021. Some of the highlights to note, including receiving our first leaking underground storage tank reimbursement check from the IEPA for the work that had been done to remove the underground storage tanks. Obviously, the demolition of the existing canopy and building is probably the most obvious to everyone of the work that's been done on the site. As the City Council knows, you all endorsed the preferred concept plan for the redevelopment of the site. And as discussed on a previous agenda item, we have made the full stop or recommending the full stop condition at the intersection of Batavia and Warrenville Road. The work is continuing on the site as planned in the original presentation to the City Council when it was first approved to purchase the property, and we're continuing coordination with the IPA and communication with the IPA to make sure that this is the most efficient process and work plan that we can do with our consultant that has been helping us out on the work. Obviously, the eventual goal is to get to a public open space amenity and a desirable mixed-use property along the Batavia Road frontage. In the backup memo, I also included a detailed analysis of the project funding of estimated costs versus actual costs expended to date. The main takeaway from all those numbers that you see in there is that the general investment that is consistent with the original City Council decision process to purchase the property. If you guys have any questions, I would take them at this time, but it is an informational item.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions from the council? Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, thanks. I just needed one thing clarified. On page 2, under preliminary site planning efforts, your last bullet point is begin development of requests for proposals for primary engineering plan. Is that for the, what engineering plan is it? Is it for what we want that to look like, or are we back to what we need to do with the property before we do anything?
It's more of a, we need to decide what, or put together a concept / preliminary engineering plan to decide what types of site development work is going to be needed to be done in terms of mostly from the stormwater management and floodplain perspectives. We know there's a lot of floodplain on the property. We know that there may be unlikely detention requirements, but it's called best management practices. So how are we going to deal with that? Along with that, to be more efficient about how we clean up the site, it is better to come up with a conceptual plan so we know exactly where the parking lot's going to go and where, I mean, we know where the buildings are going to go in the parking lot, but how are we going to address if we need detention or best management practices or compensatory storage for the floodplain fill. So it's more of a site engineering from the engineering process to better make our future decisions more efficient.
Great, thanks. That was good. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for the informational report.
Thank you.
Again, next item is an informational report likewise on the 2020 TIF School District and Library District reimbursement payments. Community and Economic Director Menser will tell us about this item. Ron?
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening to the City Council. Just about 2 months ago now, the city finalized the reimbursement payments for calendar year 2020 to the school district and the library district for both TIF 3 and TIF 4. We thought tonight would be a good opportunity to share some highlights from that process with the City Council, remind everybody about the statutory requirements that the city has to reimburse the library and school districts for TIF impacts, and then just to summarize some of the key numbers that are associated with the 2020 reimbursements that the city just made. Under the State of Illinois TIF Act, the city is required to reimburse the library district or a school district that has received additional population impacts because of TIF-assisted housing units that are occupied in the TIF district during that calendar year. In the city of Warrenville, we have 2 TIF districts. In TIF district number 3, there is one residential project that qualifies as TIF-assisted housing. That's the Stafford Place project that was developed by Erhardt Construction. And in TIF 4, we have 2 housing projects that would qualify as TIF-assisted housing. That's the Lexington Trace project on the west side of Route 59 and the Everton project on the east side of Route 59. Under the TIP Act, the school district and the library district must annually submit a letter to the city requesting reimbursement for those impacts and then provide data to support how much new population they were required to serve during that calendar year. Both Warrenville Library District and School District 200 met the requirements, submitted that information. It was reviewed in the context of the various provisions and requirements of the TIF Act, and ultimately the city did issue reimbursements to both districts for both TIF 3 and TIF 4. In TIF number 3, the Earhart Stafford Place project had 22 homes that were occupied at the end of 2020. Those 22 homes had 44 people living in them, and 5 students were registered in District 200 schools from those 22 units. In 2020, calendar year 2020 or property tax year 2020, those 22 units generated approximately $200,000 worth of TIF revenue. The city ultimately reimbursed the school district for $60,000 worth of costs that they incurred to educate the new students that lived in that project that year. And the library district received a $2,000 reimbursement for that calendar year in accordance with the provisions of the state TIF Act. In TIF 4, between the Lexington Trace and Everton project, there were 51 townhouse units that were occupied by the end of fiscal year or calendar year 2020. Those 51 units generated about $145,000 worth of TIF revenue. There were 103 people estimated to live in those 51 units, and only 2 students were registered in those, from those 51 units in District 200 schools in 2020. In total, the school district received a reimbursement of $24,000, and the library district received a reimbursement of $3,000 for the calendar year 2020. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions. The population and school registration numbers I just shared are slightly lower than what we originally expected and anticipated. So there's fewer people living in those neighborhoods than what we would have normally thought to be the case, and there's certainly less children living in those neighborhoods than, or school-age children living in those neighborhoods than what we would normally expect to see, at least thus far.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Alderman Goodman.
My first question you've already answered, which was how did this match up to our predictions? And I think, as you said, this is fewer school-age children than we predicted. So I guess the follow-up question I have for that was, did the amount of these reimbursement payments match what we expected? Because particularly in TIF 3, having over a quarter of the TIF revenue go to the school district might not have been what I expected, I guess.
Mm-hmm. The reimbursement in TIF 3 was a little higher than what we anticipated, but the reimbursement in TIF 4 was definitely significantly less than what we had anticipated.
Okay. And the formula is based on the type of housing and not just strictly 5 children in one child from the other?
The reimbursement is based on the amount of TIF revenue that's generated, and then there's a cap under the state law of what percentage of that revenue that can be reimbursed legally, but it does tie back to the number of students that actually are registered in the school district that year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the council? Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand a couple of things. So the Park District funds that we've been receiving in lieu of the land, that's how the Park District gets, I mean, that's how the Park District gets funds when developers give them, I mean, they're not part of this, obviously, this system here with numbers of, however they're doing it for the library. The Park District is getting reimbursed with TIF funds in another way.
The Park District does not receive any reimbursement from the TIF district. In fact, there's no provisions in the state TIF statute that would allow that to happen automatically by the city. So it's, to a certain extent, it's not allowed under the current structure of the TIF Act. The TIF Act includes specific provisions, requirements, and formulas that spell out how a municipality can and, in fact, is obligated in certain situations to reimburse both the library and school district. There's nothing, the TIF statute doesn't speak to reimbursements to the other overlapping districts, including the Park District or the Fire District for that matter. The donations you're talking about are school, park, and library donations that all developers of residential units are required to contribute to the city, regardless of whether or not the property's in a TIF district or not. It's in addition to any TIF funds that are generated. And those are under an intergovernmental agreement the city has with the Park District. They're shared back. I think the agreement is approximately 65% of them go to the Park District, and then the city keeps the other 35%, at least at this point in time. And the Park District then has the ability to use those to either buy additional land to build parks on or to improve their existing park facilities.
Okay, right. So we do this every year?
Yes.
Is that what this, okay. And so coming up sometime here in, if it's calendar year, and this year, we will know what we are happening in 2021. We'll get a new whole set of numbers of students, and we'll do this again, right?
That's correct, every year.
Until the end of the TIF. Okay.
Until the end of the TIF.
Yeah, I just wanted to, sometimes I'm asking these questions so the public understands
Yeah.
that these taxing bodies, one way or the other, are getting funds and they are benefiting from not only the development, but from this TIF tool we have. It really works well. And so anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for the report, Director Menser. Our next item is consideration of a staff recommendation to create and staff temporary part-time permit and zoning technician position. Assistant Community Development Director Consuelo Aguias will introduce this item. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. This item before you tonight is requesting your consideration of supporting staff's recommendation to create and staff a temporary part-time permit and zoning technician position. Some quick background on this matter. We are currently in the process of recruiting a new staff member to occupy this position that's been advertised. Now, there is a quick change from a staff perspective within the Community Development Department. This position historically has been known as the administrative assistant position, one of two in the department. However, with the retirement of Marie Lupo, who is one of the two staff members that have historically been in one of the two positions, she retired earlier this year and she's vacated her position. It was an opportunity for the city to reevaluate what this position does and to reevaluate the title. So the title is now permit and zoning technician, and we are looking for someone to fill that permanent position. In the meantime, we are seeking approval to move forward with a temporary part-time permanent zoning technician that would ultimately hopefully work with the new hire during the transition of the new hire taking over as a permanent full-time staff member. This position is very critical, at least from a part-time perspective, to be able to continue the services that we have provided. This position is responsible for any special zoning-related applications, supporting effective and efficient Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals meetings, preparing meeting minutes, and helping coordinate the building permit process and activities within our department. To ensure that there is no interruption from the efficient zoning and property maintenance code enforcement services that our department has experienced over the years. Marie was here for over 16 years, and her expertise and her work ethic was something to admire. And we're certainly going to be looking for someone with those qualities to come full time. But in the meantime, we are seeking and requesting support from you to allow the community development staff to pursue a temporary part-time permanent zoning technician. This will require to amend the city's authorized strength ordinance. So that's important to note. Should you support this initiative, we would have to amend that and to create and authorize the filling of a temporary part-time permanent zoning technician position for a period that would expire no later than 6 weeks after the new permanent, full-time permanent zoning technician begins his or her employment. Second, to approve a $40 per hour pay rate for this temporary position for an average of 15 hours per week. And that would be, the 40 hours is consistent with what the range for this position would be if we were to be contracted with an outside consulting firm for this type of services. There are sufficient funds included in the fiscal year 2023 budget to cover this expense. And I could answer any questions that the council has.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Alderman Lockett.
So to summarize, we're gonna bring Marie back part-time to train.
She has expressed interest, and I would ideally like her to come back and train. There's no one better, in my opinion, to train the new full-time hire that we're currently seeking. We're in the middle of interviews for that full-time position. And granted, but provided the state rules allow for her to come back and work part-time under this role. I believe that there's, because of IMRF and retirement benefits, there is a time period that she cannot work for not only us, but for any government entity. So until there is time to allow for that to pass, this would be something that would be offered to her, and I think she's expressed interest in coming back and assisting us with that.
Yeah, I personally think it's a good idea if it works, if it's legal, so.
And most of her appearances will be virtual, from what I understand. She is located elsewhere, and will make her appearance online or through the phone, or not necessarily be physically present at the city, correct?
Correct. You know, the goal is obviously to assist during the meetings and train the new hire ultimately with what the standards are, and our high standards for recording the minutes and agenda packets and working with the commission, and that would be very beneficial.
Thank you. Are there other questions? If not, Alderman Lockett?
I'd like to make a motion that the city council approve an amended authorized strength ordinance that creates and authorizes the filling of a temporary, part-time, permit and zoning technician position at a rate of $40 per hour for an average of 15 hours per week for a time period ending 3 months after the start of the new full-time permit and zoning technician.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And we're on to the next item, which is to review and file the Community Development Department Fiscal Year 2023 Work Program Update. And I don't know if anyone has any questions or whether Mr. Menser wants to share anything with us, but if no one has their hands up, we'll accept and file this report. Thank you. And then our last item on this evening's agenda is, for your information also, it's to review and file the bi-monthly code enforcement activity report. And if there's no questions about this, we'll move along to the next action of the meeting. Alderman Goodman.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before I call for a vote, I'd just like to thank staff for providing us with the information that they present to us, and with all the recommendations. It really helps us in our deliberations and makes it easy to make many of these decisions. So all those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Good night.